Alright guys, so in this video I'll be replacing all the broken parts on my Traxxas X-Maxx. As you might know that in my previous video where I was bashing the truck for the very first time, I ended up breaking the lower A-arm and the shock shaft is also bent. So some of the parts need to be replaced and I've got the replacement parts with me. So we'll take a look at how to replace the lower A-arm for the Traxxas X-Maxx and also how to replace the shock shaft. I've already removed the wheels, so I'll unclip the body. And here we have a close-up look of what all is damaged. So the lower A-arm is broken, the suspension retainer pin is missing, and the shaft is bent like I said. So first I'll disassemble the broken A-arm. Now here we have a few pins which hold the spindle carrier or the hub and the lower arm together. So I'll have to remove this and also this pin over here. And these pins are held in place by the screws over here. So I'll remove this. So it's a 2mm hex screw. With the help of a tweezer, I can push the pin and it should slide out from this side. Now I'll have to slide this longer pin on this side. So I'll use the pliers. Remove the pin. So the lower A-arm is separated. Here we can see the broken side. Now I'll be replacing this with the HD lower arm and the part number is 7831 and you can read it says heavy duty. So the HD arm costs $12 and the regular stock arm is $10. So just the $2 difference. Next, to remove the suspension, I'll use the 2mm hex wrench again and remove this screw from the shock tower, and then with a tweezer I'll pull the pin and the suspension will be separated, and you can see how heavily this shaft is bent. I really question the durability of the parts on this truck which are stock. Now there was an option for titanium shock shaft, but some of the users in the Facebook group said that the titanium shaft basically has a titanium coating on it and the strength or the durability is the same as the normal ones, and these cost about $18, whereas the titanium shock shaft are for $25. So I decided to buy the regular one, and these come with the ball joint installed. So to disassemble this suspension, I've decreased the tension so that it's easier to remove the spring. So here we have a screw which has to be removed. And then I'll have to pull the spring and separate this spring retainer. Now this part seems to be in good condition, so I'll reuse this. Here we have the spring and the bent shaft. Now I do have 30 weight silicone oil with me which I can use to refill the shock, but I'll be reusing the fluid inside of this shock. So I'll use this tool and twist the shock cap. So here we have the gasket or the sealing, and you can see the shock fluid. So like I said, the shock fluid is absolutely clean from the inside, and there's no point in filling it up with new one. So I'll empty the fluid in this plastic cup that I have, and I think it'll be easier to refill as well. I'll keep this shock upside down for some time so that all the oil can drip and fall in the container. Till then I'll install this lower arm, so I'll keep this aside. The part number for the lower HD arm is 7831. So if we take a look at both the arms side by side, we can see that there is a noticeable difference, particularly in the way the design is and the thickness as well. So the very first difference you can obviously see is that on the stock arm we don't have any filling in the gap over here, whereas on the HD arm we do have some support on this side and even over here. So wherever there is a gap in the lower A arm, we have some extra material that has some extra support, I guess. The X shape on the HD arm is a lot thicker than the regular one. And if we take a look at from the bottom side, we can see that the gap on the regular arm is more, whereas the HD arm, the gap is less. So we have more material on this. So other than that, I don't see any difference. We have the Traxxas branding on this. On the regular arm, I don't see any Traxxas branding. Whenever you order the lower arm or the upper arm, you have to be sure which side you're ordering because they are site specific. Otherwise you could waste your money. So very simply, I'll just slide this arm and make sure that it's aligned with the hinge plate, and I'll insert the longer pin. So to secure the pin, we have two screws, one on this side, one on the back, which will prevent the shaft from falling out. One screw is on this broken arm over here, so I'll reuse this. Actually, I could have installed this prior to inserting the pin, because now it might be a bit difficult to. Alright, so the better option is to just remove the pin all the way. I'll remove the pin once more. And first install the retaining screw. There is no space for the wrench to fit in. You don't want to over tighten this because there is a possibility you can strip out the plastic threading and damage it. Alright, so now I'll reinsert. Make sure it's aligned. And once it's flush, I can install this retaining screw over here. Alright, so now let's get to the suspension. Here we have a view of the shock from the inside. Now I'll have to push the shaft all the way, and because it's bent, obviously I cannot apply pressure and try to push it further. Now here we have the nut which holds the piston. So this is gonna be a bit tricky because I'll have to find a nut wrench that will go inside. So let me get back. Alright, so I've found the right size and the correct length of the tool. So a 0.7 millimeter hex nut tool set is what I have to use, and this is from Traxxas, which I had bought a long time ago. Insert the tool. Luckily the nut is not torqued and it's easy to remove. So the nut is separated and I can pull the shaft. I'll have to clean the dirt over here. On the bottom we have some rubber boot, which I guess can be removed. Actually, you know what, let's just take a look at all the internals. Just making sure everything is cleaned up before I install the new shaft. I can even see that the aluminum shock itself is bent on this side. There is a small dent over here. Not sure if it will lead to any fluid leakage, but I'll have to see that. Here we have the piston that's in the shock of the Traxxas X-Maxx, and it has 8 holes on it. So then I'll unpack the new shock shaft. Part number is 7763. These come with the rod end and the ball joint installed. Now before I insert this in, I'll have to apply some silicone oil so that the o-ring inside the plastic part does not tear up. So I'll just dip this in the oil and carefully insert it. I can definitely feel that something is obstructing the shaft from going through, but once it's through, at this stage I'll install the washer and I'll connect the main assembly of the shock with the lower half of the suspension. And then reinstall the shock piston. And then install the nut. Now I'm holding the bottom half of the shaft with this pinky finger, and once the nut is seated, I can secure it. I'm not going to over tighten it because there has to be some freedom of movement for the piston to rotate. If we over tighten the nut inside, then there is a possibility that the piston will not rotate freely and it might add resistance. Now as I'm working on this shaft, one thing that I noticed which is missing is a rubber boot over here, which will prevent the shaft from slamming all the way inside. And I think that's one of the reasons why this shaft might have bent, because if there was a rubber boot over here, then it would have absorbed quite a bit of impact and the shaft wouldn't bend like we have on the HPI Savage. So the shaft is down all the way, and I'll fill up the shock. So I'll add in a few drops from the new bottle. Right, so I have this 30 weight oil from Team Associated. Once the suspension is filled up, I'll very slowly and gently remove the air by pushing the shaft up, and we can see tiny air bubbles. I'm rotating the shaft and applying gentle pressure. So now the bubbles are visible. So I'll wait for some time for the bubbles to clear out, and then I'll install the rubber gasket and the shock cap. Right, so it's been a while and most of the air is cleared out. Now the shaft is completely pulled, and here I have the rubber gasket. I'll place a cloth underneath so that any excess oil that spills on the floor is easier to clean. Now I'll install the shock cap. So once the cap is secured, I can check if the shaft is moving smoothly, and everything is perfect. Alright, so now I'll install the spring. Insert the spring, and I'll be reusing the old spring retainer because this seems to be in good condition. So we need to align this. And then install the screw. Alright, so the suspension has been rebuilt and it's ready to be installed in the truck. So the ball on the suspension will be seated over here. So once the ball snaps in place, I'll have to install the pin. Part number for the pin set is 7742. So in the package we have two sizes of the pin. One is short while the other is long. For the bottom half we have to use the shorter one. So once it's in place, I'll use the screw and secure it. And now I'll connect the top half of the suspension. Now the shock tower is also in plastic. It has quite a bit of flex. And before I actually insert the pin, very important is to make sure that the drive shaft or the CVD is seated in the diff cup. Once the lower arm is attached, it's not possible to fit in the CVD in the diff cup. So if you've forgotten this step, you'll have to once more remove the one end of the lower arm. So once the diff cup and the CVD is in place, and finally the last step to attach the shock cap and the shock tower. Here we have to use the longer pin and install it from the front. And then install the retaining screw. This screw is a bit longer than the screw that we have used to secure the lower assembly. Alright, so the X-Maxx has been restored. So let's see how this HD arm will survive and whether I would break any other arms. In that case, I will have to replace it. I'm anyways going to replace all the arms with HD arms. So that's about it, guys. That's all I had to share in this video. I just had to restore my X-Maxx and get it ready for the next run. So stay tuned for the upcoming videos, and I hope you find my videos entertaining and informative. Now one thing that I've noticed after assembling everything is the CVD on this side is also bent. So if I rotate the wheel hub, you can see that this drive shaft is bent. Now this is also a bit annoying because I just realized this and I'll have to order this. Nevertheless, I'll just run the truck as it is and wait for the CVD to arrive and then replace it.